All right, LFA 125. You got this fight coming up February 25th. It's around a 4 month turnaround, right? Is that what you were expecting?
Um, I don't really have any expectations when it comes to when fights get booked and stuff like that because things fall through all the time. So they tell me I got to fight, and I start training for one, and if it falls through, it falls through. If it's there, I'm prepared. So it's one of those things, dude. Like this is the opponent for this LFA 125 is actually a replacement opponent. The original opponent fell through, so this guy's a replacement on like 2 weeks' notice.
Oh shit. So you've been, I don't know, like when you signed the contract originally, there was another guy, and then you were getting ready for him, and now it's just flipped. It must be
Right,
like, as a fighter, man, like you're a lot of what you do is in preparation. The fight is the result of preparation. So it
right.
must be frustrating, dude. Like, the past couple of years, right? Just like fights coming and going, and then these guys show up, and it's great to fight, but man, sometimes you really want to have like a clean camp, and then go in there and kind of show everything you've been preparing, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like ideally, that's what you'd want, right? But in fighting, nothing works out perfect, and just in the world in general, nothing really works out perfect. So you got to be prepared for uh, those things that just like those random things that come at you. Random obstacles that get thrown at you. But at the end of the day, when you're competing, you're train or when you're training, right? You're trying to be the best version of yourself. You're not necessarily training for a particular opponent, right? Um, I want to be well rounded. I want my skills to be as best they can be. So of course, yeah, no, don't get me wrong. It's great to game plan. It's great to prepare for an opponent. But when I'm training, all those skills that I'm sharpening, they're going to stick with me, and those can like all those skills will always be available in the fight, regardless who the opponent is.
I think that's what kind of separates fighting compared to other sports. Like if you look at other sports, like they're preparing for a particular opponent, right? Because the opponent will not change. You know what I mean? Like if you're playing against like the Super Bowl, it's the Cincinnati Bengals versus the Los Angeles Rams. I think it's the Los Angeles Rams, but you're playing the Los Angeles Rams if you're the Bengals, so it's not gonna like switch like 1 week out, like, oh, you're not playing the Rams anymore, you're gonna play the 49ers. You know what I mean? So that's what fighting is like, unique in that aspect.
Yeah, that's true. But at the same time, uh well, no, I agree with you. Yeah, I was gonna say like even in the fight when you're preparing for somebody, they can change. But most people just like sports teams, like of course you're the the team that you're playing could change their game plan and stuff too. But most of the time they have specific habits that they kind of continuously do. I think everyone does, regardless of what sport or what type of position you're in, you kind of have habits that you keep that keep following you as far as you go in that career or whatever path it is.
For yourself, when you enter a fight, right, and you kind of, you gauge your opponent, right, in the first couple of minutes. Have you ever had a moment where you saw like the habits of a certain fighter that you knew about heading into the fight right away, and it was just like a moment of like, damn, I got this dude, like it's gonna be a good night? Have you ever had those moments?
In my last fight, I knew that my he threw a lot of hooks. He like throw, and my coach actually pointed it out to me. One of my striking coaches was like, he likes to throw a lot of hooks. So lots of you're going to be able to uh, bob and weave and duck under those. And um, in that fight, I was able to do that pretty effectively. And he missed a lot of his punches that he was throwing at me. So that was one instance that he kind of had that habit, and even his coaches noticed that he has that habit because they were screaming at him to do throw because he likes to throw these wild hooks, right? Because he's a heavy hitter. And so, sometimes even when you're training, those things stick with you. It takes years and years of repetition and drilling to kind of get away from some of those bad habits. And if you're not doing that properly, they'll come out in the fight, especially in a high intense type of situation where it's like, adrenaline, you're not really thinking straight, that type of stuff.
Yeah, I think that's another battle too, right? Is it's high adrenaline. Thoughts are not, processing sometimes as fast as it should be. Like, can you get better at that, do you think, as a fighter, of just processing information much quicker in fight?
I think so. I think that comes with also experience, right? So you hear guys talk about that when they're commentating the UFC all the time. Some of these new bloods versus these experienced guys, and they'll talk about the experience that they have and their ability to relax in certain situations, and um, all that comes with just doing it, right? That's one of those things where you're not going to just be good at that by visualizing it, or it's almost like one of those things you have to do it to get better at it, right? To be in a high intensity pressure situation where um, someone's trying to take your head off, and you get used to feeling that. And I mean, part of that too is like just fighting fear, you know what I mean? I think because sometimes, everybody's going to get those moments of like uh where your heart's racing and you're like, oh shit, like this guy just rocked my ass or hit me pretty hard. And you just kind of have to face it and just quiet it in the moment. And the more that happens to you, I think the more often you'll be able, like, the better you'll get at it.
In your last fight, you went all 15 rounds against Jackson, and you got the unanimous decision. You didn't get the finish. You were expecting to probably get the finish. When you look back at it, did you feel like there was still something left after the fight was over for yourself?
Um, I mean, I pushed pretty hard. I think the altitude, and coming from altitude, right? But they double, from I'm around, I think 5,000 or so where I am right now, and we went to 8,000, so almost doubled it, right? So uh, that altitude kind of, like, I remember thinking in the first round, like, oh, I'm good, I got this, and then being like real tired when I started going into the later rounds. So I mean, we were pushing it, and uh, I think a lot of other guys on that card noticed the altitude. But yeah, man, I mean, what in that particular fight, it wasn't as exciting as I thought it was going to be when we talked. I thought it was going to be a banger, right? We were just going to be swinging, and there were moments of it. But you know, uh, when it came down to it, I did what I needed to do to win that fight, and utilize skills that I needed to pull out to win the fight. And I was pretty proud of the fight. To be honest, I thought it was a high level fight, and he was a good competitor. He brought his A game, and the dude was also acclimated to the altitude. I think they went out to Flagstaff in Arizona training at 12,000 feet. So, I mean, it was a good fight in my opinion.
Yeah, and a lot of learning lessons just from what you've talked about right now, for yourself that that you went through, and a lot of people, I think, they underestimate that elevation, going back to like Cain Velasquez when he fought for the UFC heavyweight title in Mexico, and Verdum went out there like 3 months ahead to acclimate himself, and Cain went there like the week of the fight, and then just you saw that, right? You saw the
Right.
difference, and I think people should not underestimate that. But like you said, even from 5,000 to 8,000, there is a huge difference. So next time
Mhm.
you fight at a higher elevation, there's a little bit more you can do in preparation to kind of better acclimate yourself.
Yeah, I think so. I think going up and getting that higher altitude training. I had one of my buddies from Team Elevation, and he fought right before I did, and he freaking came in after his fight. He ended up losing, but he came in after his fight and was just so gassed and exhausted. I looked at him; he's covered in blood. He's sweaty, right? And he's just laying on the floor. You could tell he's like in serious pain because, uh, they had a freaking tough fight. I think that was the Jacoby Jones and Wolverine fight, right? Or his name's Wolverine or something like that. That's his nickname. And they they freaking went at it. You know what I mean? And so after their fight, I'm warming up and I just see him exhausted. I'm like, all right, I'm about to go do that shit. You know what I mean?
Like
Yeah,
a
it's pretty wild.
precursor, right?
Yeah, it's pretty wild. You know, you're warming up for a fight and you hear these, you see some of the guys in the locker room come back and they're all beat the hell up or, gassed out. So I was like, all right, this is serious. It's go time. You
Does
know?
that pump you up, or like I always wonder, like, what does that do to certain fighters? You know what I mean? That you see guys go in like clean, and then when they come back out, and you see them again, they're just like they just been through hell. Does that pump you up, like, oh shit, like I'm about to fucking get into some shit right now, or does it just like, oh man, does that fear kick in, but it's a good fear?
No, it's to me, I just focus on what I'm doing. I'm like, I can't think about what he's doing. I can't think about what the outcome of his fight. I got to be thinking about the outcome of my fight. And when I see that those guys come in like that, I just know this is a serious fucking game that I'm playing. Right? I'm putting my body on the line, and this dude is trying to hurt me. So, the mentality, the switch is like, yeah, obviously that switch is already. I've already turned that switch on when I'm day of the fight. I'm ready to go, right? But when I see that shit, it's just a reminder. It's like, yeah, we're in here to fucking fight, and we're here to beat the hell out of each other. And there are consequences to this game, and uh, you know, but you can't put it. You got to put it out of your mind somehow.
Yeah.
But it's fun to see.
Yeah.
It was. I was like,
It
yeah,
seems like you enjoyed it.
he's tired.
This guy coming up, man, you're fighting, Caio Gregorio. He's probably the most decorated, I guess, the most experienced, has a lot of good wins. He fought in Jungle Fight, which I feel like is probably the best promotion out in Brazil besides, if the UFC goes over there, right? What have you learned about him through like tape or any kind of study?
It looks like he's an athletic dude. Looks like he is a powerful puncher, and looks like he also's got some pretty good grappling. I think he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So the dude's a solid competitor. Definitely for a short notice replacement, he ain't no chump. You know what I mean? Like, this guy's going to be a serious fight, and I got to take him seriously. So as far as that goes, like, I take everybody seriously when it comes to a fight. This guy's dangerous, so I gotta do what I gotta do to win that fight.
The one thing that I noticed about him is he hasn't fought since like August of 2019. Like, that's before the pandemic. Are you a believer in ring rust?
No, I'm not actually. I think if you're training well, and you got good training partners, you're in the gym all the time, constantly, and you're prepared, you're going to be prepared for the fight, right? So no, I don't think ring rust. I'm not a believer in it, but maybe that's because I don't let it affect me, right? Other people might be a believer in it because they let that excuse affect them or whatever. But no, man, a fight's a fight, and uh, we prepare for those every day, right? I'm in the gym preparing for that, getting that feeling, and then when it comes down to it, go in there and fight.
What are your expectations in this fight, man? You're on a 2-fight win streak now. 3 in a row puts you in a good streak.
Dude, honestly, like I said, I think this dude's gonna come to fight. He hasn't fought in a couple of years, so he wants this win too. I think he's gonna try and utilize his grappling. I'm great. My takedown defense is great. I think my hands are better than his. And as far as where the fight goes, I wouldn't be surprised if it went all 3 rounds, and I wouldn't be surprised if we got into a firefight and I finish him, right? So I try not to. People talk about visualization and stuff like that. It's hard. I maybe I haven't mastered it yet, but I have a hard time visualizing a fight because you really don't know. Like, I mean, right? So you can visualize it to a certain extent, but you're never really prepared for what's going to happen in the fight because you don't know what that guy's going to do. All you can control is what you're going to do, and depending on what sometimes that depends on what he's doing. So, um, I don't really know uh, as far as where the fight's going to go. All I know is I'm gonna fight as hard as I can. I'm gonna come out on top. You know what I mean? I'm gonna do everything I can to come out on top too.
This is a fight that will probably be very beneficial for you as you move along in your career, right? It's not like one of those give me fights. You know what I mean? This guy he's a veteran. The last fight too, man. I feel like the last fight has built to your resume a lot more than your fights maybe earlier in your career. Do you believe that too?
Yeah, I think Kai Kamaka was a good fight, even though I lost that fight. I think it was a pretty close fight. You know what I mean? So the commentators after the fight some of them thought I had won. So uh, that was a good fight. That was a good test. Um, and I think that this one will be a good test for where my skill level is, and uh, you know, if I'm ready for that next jump, and I think I am. So this will be a good proving ground.
Was there any discussions of you maybe even like going on that PFL Challengers thing in the featherweight division?
No, I never got any discussions or
Okay.
about that offers or anything like that. I don't think my management was too keen
Mm.
on it, just because they know I want the UFC, and
Okay.
uh, I have a certain expectation out of my career.
All right. Hey, you get one step closer with this victory, man, coming up at LFA 125. Michael, thank you so much, man, for the time, and good luck on the rest of the camp and on the fight.
Hey, thank you so much, man. It was good to talk with you again.